Hey everyone, Dave here from Blue Bears Games, coming back to you with another edition of $20 MTG budget decks. This episode, we're doing Elf-drazi. Essentially, this is mono green, stompy, but with a little twist. Everybody loves elves. Elves are the quintessential green staple for every time you play Magic with green. This version has the same thing that every other deck does when it's elves. It's build a lot of mana, put out big creatures, stomp your opponent. For those of you who are new to the series, if you refer back to my Death by Thopter or Crazy Cat Lady videos, you'll see the rules of how I make my budget decks for sale at the Geek Fest in Woodbury, New Jersey. So let's get started with the deck. It's elves. Let's just be honest. There's no elf deck in the game that doesn't have Llanowar elves in it if it's legal. You play 40s, you hope to drop one, you're already up on your opponent, mana-wise. That's your first one drop that you will hope to get. That's why there's 4 in there. The next one drop I gave was a 1-2 reach. It's Azori Archers. They're there more for defense, for flyers, in case you happen to run into things like the Crazy Cat Lady deck that has the 2-2 flyers. Your hope is that you can kill them with these guys. More utility than ramp as far as that goes. The other one drop is a Narnan Renegade, a 1-2 Death Toucher. It's always good to have a Death Toucher. It helps to eliminate those problem creatures that your opponent has that you want to get rid of. And it's also a bonus that if something died that turn anyway, you get a +1/+1 counter on it, so it's a 2/3. It can survive a lot of battles with that, the big butt of 3. Greenwood Sentinel, generic 2 to cast 2/2, but the good part is as Vigilance. I explained in the last video, Vigilance can actually save you. Being able to attack and block from the same creature, really helpful. It can actually win you a game or two just because you can do something that your opponent can't. One of the issues with green, and it has been its problem since the beginning of the game, is it doesn't really have an efficient way to draw cards. When it does draw cards, it draws it through its creatures. Elvish Visionary, probably one of the best cards for elves to use to draw cards. Put a couple of them in there. There's another card in here I'm going to show you later. But the essential point of this is to draw a card. It has nothing to do with the body. It's essentially a 2 to cast draw card. It's almost like you're playing blue, but it's not. Again, this is like a green stompy deck, efficient creatures to where we're trying to be. So a 2 to cast 2/3 is pretty efficient, even by the standards of original Magic. 2 to cast 2/2s in the beginning were the big, efficient creature. Now it's 2 to cast 2/3. In following with that theme, I found in my collection a couple of Nissa's Chosens. It's basically the same thing as the Elvish Warrior, except for it has the ability to be put on the bottom of your library in case you want to be able to get it back. Instead of going to the grave, it goes back in your deck so you can draw it again later if you have a way to shuffle through. So it's always a nice bonus. I went with Silkweaver Elites for the reach. Again, flying creatures, this is mostly a ground creature style deck, so anything that has reach is always a bonus. It also has the ability to draw a card. Again, green has an issue drawing cards. This card has the ability to help you draw a card to get to more creatures. So I went with a couple of them just to help you along. The most important card of this deck, in my opinion, is the Ivy Lane Denizen. Look at this card. 2/3, has a big butt, can survive a lot of things, shocks and stuff like that. But whenever a green creature just enters the battlefield, you can distribute a 1/1 counter to anything, making your creatures bigger. It's any green creature, it doesn't have to be another elf. It's an elf itself, so it has the ability to be buffed later. I put a full play set of Pima Outrider in there. The reason for that, it's a 4 to cast 4/4 Trampler. If you start getting +1/+1 counters on it, it can be pretty big, and it can get through a lot of people's cards, like a lot of creatures. You can get that extra damage through. So I put a full play set of them in. If for some reason you decide that you want to use the Fabricate to put another creature out, you can do so, but my suggestion is always to make this a 4/4 Trampler. Always. The tech of this deck is this card. This is the most important card that's utility. Mass Admirers. It's a 4 to cast 3/2. It draws you a card. The weakness of green is that. The advantage of this card over, say, the Elvish Visionary, besides the fact that it's a 3/2 and not a 1/1, is that whenever you cast any creature, if it's in your graveyard, you can return it to your hand for 2 green. Remember, we're ramping here. We're elves. We have the ability to make more mana than most. If these guys die and come back to your hand, you can draw more cards. It's very important. That's where the looping begins that I like to talk about, where you can attack with it, possibly kill a creature, possibly get some damage in. If it dies, you can bring it back to your hand, cast it again, you get more cards. As far as enchantments go, for green, this is one of the better ones because, again, it helps you draw a card. It doesn't hurt that it gives +1/+1 to the creature. You put it on a Pima Outrider. Now it's a 5/5 Trampler that lets you draw a card. And then it has Totem Armor, meaning that if that creature dies, you sacrifice the enchantment, the creature comes back. If it's with that, there is a combo there. If you have something that has Revolt on it, something of yours died, if you bring the creature back, it comes into play with the Revolt active. So keep that in mind when you're playing this deck. Now, Overrun. Play set of them. Why? You're going to be able to ramp into this. You're going to overrun. Literally, the reason why the card's called Overrun is because you're overrunning your opponent. All your creatures get bigger. All your creatures get trample. Stompy. Quintessential. It's literally the name of the game here. Playset of them are really important. Now, the name of the deck's Elf-drazi. Elf-drazi. Some of the most powerful creatures in Magic. Yes, there are really expensive ones. Yes, they are overpowered. Yes, I'd love to put them in there. But this is budget decks, guys. Let's think about that. So I had to find inexpensive monetarily Elf-drazi that would be cheap enough and do a job. So I went with Breaker of Armors for the first one, only because it basically has the same thing that Lure does, which is another green card. It basically means that all the rest of your stuff goes unblocked. So, and he's a 10/8, so he'll pretty much kill everything on your opponent's side. Good addition. I understand the 8 mana cost sounds like a lot, but wait till I get to the rares. Alright. The other Elf-drazi was the Devastator. 8/9 Trampler. Trampler is a good way for red to get through other people, get damage in instead of being chump blocked. And for the rares, the first rare I went with was Marwyn. 3 to cast. Whenever another elf, remember we're elves, comes into play, put a +1/+1 counter on her. So she herself will get bigger. But as she gets bigger, she also adds more mana. You can tap her to add a mana green equal to her power. She gets bigger as we put more stuff out. So each land or elf you put out after she's out, she gets another +1/+1 counter. She adds more green. You're ramping. That's where the ramp comes in for the Elf-drazi. That's where it comes in for the overrun. For the heavy cost stuff will be doable because of her, and because I put an Elvish Archdruid in. He buffs your elves and adds green to your mana pool for each elf. Kind of pretty basic there. Adds a lot of green. Every creature in here is an elf. You're gonna have a lot of mana available to you. You're gonna be able to cast the expensive stuff. On top of that, I added a little bit more expense to the deck as far as the mana cost. Looks expensive. It's 7 to cast, but it's a 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, you put 6 +1/+1 counters on, and then whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you gain 2 life. Remember, Ivy Lane Denizen adds +1/+1 counters. Marwyn, whenever you put a creature into play, an elf, you get a +1/+1 counter. There is some synergy here with the +1/+1 counters, so utilize this. You're going to be able to cast it between the Archdruid and Marwyn and the Llanowar Elves. You're going to be able to get it out. And the final card, I found this. It was a foil. You know my rules. If you don't know my rules, go back to Death by Thopter video and here I'll have them explain there. More +1/+1 counters, but the flashback part is the important one. 5 +1/+1 counters is pretty good for 4, but 10 for 7 sounds like a winner to me. You overrun, you win. Simple as that. You're ramping into it. you're drawing cards with the Massive Myers, with the Elvish Visionary, with the Snake Umbra. So you'll get there. This is quintessential Stompy here. For the lands, I went with Rogue's Passage. Make something unblockable. Anytime something's unblockable, you're going to get your damage through. You're going to basically win. It's important. And the 4 to tap on it shouldn't be too hard with a couple Llanowar Elves out, with any of the other ramps out. Should be able to get that through. Like I've explained in other videos for my budget decks, I like to add in lands that cycle if I can find them, just so that your draws are less bad. Less basic land draws while you're playing equals better draws when you're, trying to win. So this is to help eliminate some of those bad draws. Same thing with the Evolving Wilds. I've explained it in very heavy detail about how fetch lands are worth so much because they thin your deck out of bad draws. The Evolving Wilds is just the really budget version of that, so they go in every deck. And the rest is just basic farce. So this is my version of what I call Elf-drazi. It's basically green stompy elves with a couple Elf-drazi thrown in. As usual, I like to ask you guys to like the video if you like what you see. Subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing a lot more videos as I go. I think this is my third. I'll be doing, I think, about 20 more before the convention comes up. That's in about 30 days. And go to the Facebook page, like me on Facebook, add me as a friend. I'm always around. If you have any questions or concerns, use the comments down below. And I will see you next time. This is Dave from Bluebirds Games saying thank you and have a good day.